I was in my junior year of college when this happened. It was a pretty normal semester for the most part. Stressful, sure, but nothing out of the ordinary. That all changed one night in October. I had just finished a brutal week of midterms, and my friends convinced me to go out for a few drinks to celebrate. I wasn't much of a drinker, but I figured I deserved a night off. We ended up at some random bar just off campus, a place I'd never been before. It was dimly lit, crowded, and smelled like stale beer, but the energy was good. We grabbed a table near the back and started drinking. A few rounds in, I excused myself to go to the bathroom. The hallway leading to the restrooms was long and narrow, with a flickering light at the end that gave it a weird, eerie feel. I pushed open the bathroom door, stepped inside, and locked the stall behind me. Then I heard it, a faint scratching sound. At first I thought it was coming from one of the other stalls, but when I looked down, I didn't see any feet. The scratching continued, slow and deliberate, like nails dragging against a wooden surface. "Hello?" I called out, feeling a little stupid. Silence. I finished up quickly, washed my hands, and hurried out of there. As I walked back to my friends, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been watching me. The night went on without incident, and eventually, we decided to call it. I walked back to my apartment alone, my breath visible in the crisp night air. It was only a 10-minute walk, but I couldn't shake this weird, nagging feeling, like I was being followed. Every time I turned around, the sidewalk was empty. When I got to my apartment, I locked the door behind me and sighed in relief. I chalked the whole thing up to paranoia and exhaustion and went straight to bed. But then, at around 3 a.m., I woke up. At first, I didn't know why, but then I heard it, the same scratching sound from the bathroom. Only this time, it was coming from inside my apartment. I sat up slowly, my heart pounding. The scratching was coming from my closet. I reached for my phone, my hands shaking, and turned on the flashlight. The beam of light landed on my closet door, which was slightly ajar. I could see the edge of something, a shadow, a shape, lurking just beyond the doorframe. I didn't move, I couldn't. Then, in a voice that didn't sound like my own, I whispered, "Who's there?" The scratching stopped. For several seconds, there was silence. Then, the door creaked open just an inch more. That was it. I bolted out of bed, ran out of my room, and out of my apartment, not stopping until I was in the hallway. My upstairs neighbor, an older guy named Richard, opened his door, looking at me like I was crazy. I told him what happened, and he agreed to check my apartment with me. When we went back inside, the closet door was wide open, but there was nothing there. No signs of forced entry, no footprints, no one hiding in the bathroom or under my bed. I barely slept that night. The next morning, I convinced myself I had just imagined it. Stress and exhaustion could do that, right? Then I saw my phone. There was a new note saved in my phone's notepad app. It wasn't there before. It was just one sentence. "I like your closet." I moved out a month later. I've always loved winter. The cold air, the way fresh snow dampens all the sound around you, the cozy feeling of being bundled up inside. But last winter changed that for me. It was the night I realized that silence isn't always peaceful. Sometimes, it's watching. I had just moved into my first apartment on my own. It was a little place on the outskirts of town, backed by a dense stretch of woods. The rent was cheap, and it felt like a good deal at the time. It was quiet, which I liked. One night in mid-January, a heavy snowstorm rolled in. I was sitting on my couch scrolling through my phone when I heard a knock at the door. It wasn't loud, just 3 soft taps. I frowned. It was nearly midnight. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. Nothing, just darkness and the snowfall. Maybe it was the wind, I thought, but the knock had been too deliberate for that. I stood there for a few seconds, listening, before finally walking away. But then it happened again. 3 soft knocks. This time, I flicked on the porch light and peeked through the window. There were footprints in the snow. I stepped back, my pulse quickening. I lived alone. I didn't know many people in town, and I definitely wasn't expecting visitors this late. I grabbed my phone and texted my friend Matt, just to have someone to talk to while I tried to calm myself down. Matt joked that it was probably some drunk neighbor who got the wrong door. I wanted to believe him. Until I heard it again. Knock, knock, knock. Only this time it was coming from the back of my apartment. I froze. My apartment had a sliding glass door that led to the small backyard and the woods beyond. My stomach turned to ice. Someone had gone around the side of the building. Slowly, I crept toward the sliding door. The blinds were drawn, but I could see the faint outline of something standing just beyond the glass. I stood there, heart pounding, barely breathing. Then, the motion sensor light outside flicked on, and I saw him. A man, tall and thin, wearing a black coat dusted with snow. His hands were pressed against the glass, fingers splayed out. His face was pale, almost gray in the dim light, and he was grinning right at me. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over my coffee table. My hands shook as I fumbled with my phone, trying to call the police, and then the light went out. The backyard was pitch black again. I couldn't see him anymore, but I knew he was still there, standing, watching. I finally managed to call 911, my voice shaking as I whispered what was happening. The dispatcher told me to stay on the line and lock all my doors. I wanted to tell her I already had, but I suddenly wasn't so sure. Had I locked the front door after checking the peephole? My stomach dropped. The front door knob rattled. I ran to it, throwing the deadbolt just as the door jolted against the frame. The dispatcher was asking me something, but I couldn't focus. All I could hear was the sound of slow, deliberate knocking. I held my breath. Then, just like that, it stopped. The silence stretched out. I stayed by the door, listening, waiting. Minutes passed. Then, headlights washed over my apartment. A police car. I practically sprinted to the window, watching as an officer stepped out and began searching the perimeter. I told the dispatcher the cops were here, and she finally let me go. They didn't find anything, just footprints, leading from the woods to my front door, then around the side of the building, but none leading back. Whoever it was, never left. I never really liked road trips, but last summer, my best friend Jake convinced me to go on one. It was supposed to be a guy's trip, a long drive through the Pacific Northwest, just the two of us and the open road. We planned to camp along the way, see some national parks, and unplug from everything for a while. It sounded perfect. The first few days were great. We drove through Oregon, camped out by a lake, and even found an old diner that looked straight out of the 1950s. But by the fourth day, things started to feel off. It was around 6 p.m. when we pulled into a rest stop in the middle of nowhere. The sun was starting to set, casting long shadows across the empty parking lot. There was only one other car there, an old station wagon, but we didn't see anyone around. Jake went inside to use the bathroom while I stayed by the car, stretching my legs. That's when I noticed something weird. There were footprints in the dirt near the edge of the lot, leading toward the trees. They weren't normal footprints, though. They were deep, almost like someone had been dragging their feet. I followed them a little, just out of curiosity. Then I saw it. A small, tattered notebook lying half buried in the dirt. I picked it up, brushing off the dust. The pages were filled with messy handwriting, rambling, paranoid notes about them. I flipped through, trying to make sense of it. Then I got to the last page. It said, in shaky letters, "Don't look at their faces." I felt a chill run down my spine. Jake came back then, asking what I was doing. I showed him the notebook, half laughing, but he just shrugged it off. "Probably some crazy guy's journal," he said. I nodded, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. We got back in the car and kept driving. As night fell, we started looking for a place to set up camp. There weren't many options out there, but eventually we found a small, unmarked dirt road leading into the woods. It looked secluded, which was perfect. We set up our tent and got a fire going. Jake was messing with his flashlight, making shadow puppets on the trees, while I just stared into the fire, still thinking about that notebook. Then we heard it. A crunching sound, like footsteps in the underbrush. Jake turned off his flashlight. We both listened. Silence. Then, closer this time, the same sound. A slow, deliberate step. We grabbed our flashlights and pointed them into the trees. At first, we didn't see anything, just darkness. Then something moved. A figure stepped out from behind a tree. It was tall, too tall. Its limbs were long and thin, and it moved in this strange, jerky way like a puppet on strings. Then another one appeared, and another. They didn't get closer. They just stood there, staring at us. Jake whispered, "What the hell are those?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. One of them tilted its head like it was studying us. The firelight barely illuminated their faces, but what I saw made my stomach drop. They didn't have faces, just smooth, featureless skin where their eyes and mouths should have been. Jake grabbed my arm. We're leaving. Now. We moved slowly, trying not to startle them, but as soon as we started backing toward the car, they moved too. In unison. I've never packed up a campsite so fast. We sprinted to the car, throwing everything into the trunk without caring how it landed. I jumped into the driver's seat while Jake fumbled with his seatbelt. The figures were closer now. Still not running, just walking toward us, their movements unnatural and stiff. I slammed the car into reverse, spinning the tires in the dirt before peeling out onto the road. Neither of us spoke. Not when we got back onto the highway. Not when we stopped at a gas station 2 hours later. Not even when we finally found a cheap motel and locked ourselves inside. It wasn't until we were safe in our room, door bolted, that Jake finally said it. "You still have that notebook?" I pulled it out of my backpack. Flipping through the pages again, I found something I hadn't noticed before. Near the middle, written in small, cramped letters, was a single sentence. "If you see them, don't run. They like the chase." I don't know what we saw that night. I don't want to know. All I know is we didn't go back for our tent. We didn't finish our trip, and we sure as hell didn't stop at any more rest stops.